Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little, and not those who know much, who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. I have steadily endeavored to keep my mind free so as to give up any hypothesis, however much beloved, and I cannot resist forming one on every subject as soon as facts are shown to be opposed to it. If the misery of the poor is caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. We stopped looking for monsters under our bed when we realized that they were inside us. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. Blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. It is a cursed evil to any man to become as absorbed in any subject as I am in mine. Sympathy for someone else's joy is a much rarer gift than sympathy for someone else's suffering. What a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horribly cruel work of nature. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species becomes at doing the things they need to survive. Man tends to increase at a greater rate than his means of subsistence. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which he tends. I have called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation. Man is descended from a hairy, tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits. It is always advisable to perceive clearly our ignorance. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created parasitic wasps with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable. I love fool's experiments. I am always making them. Animals, whom we have made our slaves, we do not like to consider our equal. We are always slow in admitting any great change, of which we do not see the intermediate steps. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. In conclusion, it appears that nothing can be more improving to a young naturalist than a journey in distant countries. On the ordinary view of each species, having been independently created, we gain no scientific explanation. We can allow satellites, planets, suns, universe, nay whole systems of universes to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect we wish to be created at once by special act. The more we know the immutable laws of nature, the more incredible miracles become for us. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. There is nothing more unbearable than idleness. False facts are highly injurious to the progress of science, for they often endure long, but false views, if supported by some evidence, do little harm, for everyone takes a salutary pleasure in proving their falseness. To those who fully recognize the immorality of the human soul, the death of our world will seem less terrible. How paramount the future is to the present when one is surrounded by children. Marrying is not at all difficult, it is difficult to be married. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others. One original law leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live, and the weakest die. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity, more humble and I believe truer, to consider him created from animals. Share secrets with those who have no friends. Be friends only with those who have many friends. This preservation of favorable variations and the rejection of injurious variations I call natural selection, or the survival of the fittest. The survival of preservation of certain favored words in the struggle for existence is natural selection. Keep steadily in mind that each organic being is striving to increase, that each at some period of its life has the struggle for life and suffer great destruction. The war of nature is not incessant. The vigorous, the healthy, and the happy survive and multiply. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts, which in us would be called moral. I see no good reasons why the views given in this volume should shock the religious views of anyone. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. In the long history of humankind and animal kind too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed.